class I took in college was called Sociology and the Movies. Over that 16-week period, we saw different films, and the idea was to look at the plot, character development, and really to see what was the meaning and the message of the movie. What was the meaning and the message of what we saw? One of my favorite movies includes one of my favorite actors. 2007 comedy drama called The Bucket List, starring Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to watch it. Or if you haven't seen it in a while, go home and watch it again. So the movie is about two strangers who meet in a hospital room. And pretty quickly, you find out that they're both going to die. Carter is played by Morgan Freeman, and Edward is played by Jack Nicholson. And so one day, Carter starts writing things that he wants to do before he dies, hence the bucket list. And Edward has the means for them to do these things. So then the movie takes off. And they began to travel around the world to mark off these things that are on their list. As they do, you can tell that their friendship begins to happen. There's a very poignant, powerful scene. They're sitting in front of the pyramids in Giza, in Egypt. One next to each other, looking at this wonderful wonder of the world. And then Carter says to Edward, there's just Egyptian myth that when you die, you go to heaven and you're asked two questions. The first question is, did you find joy in your life? Isn't that a great question for us to think about? Did you find joy in your life? There's an acronym that I learned a while ago. Joy stands for kind of the way in which we ought to relate to each other. The first is for Jesus, the J. The O is for others, and the Y is for yourself. And so it's really about, did we connect with each other? Someone sent me a prayer yesterday, included this. It said, Father, connect us to the people you have placed in our lives. Father, connect us to the people that you have placed in our life. In a world that is sometimes so disconnected, in a world that sometimes feels like it's so polarized, either you're in this camp or you're in this camp. Jesus is calling us to be one. In his prayer to the Father, he says, Father, let them be one as you and I are one. And we find that unity in the prayer of the Mass this morning, where all of us gather, where all of us come together as brothers and sisters of the Lord Jesus. The second question that's posed is, was your life a sense of joy for others? Think of that person or those people that radiate joy. In our family, it was my cousin, Rosa, who stood about this tall. And what she didn't have in height, she had in this great love of God. How is God asking us to share that joy? I'm glad you asked that question. So here's the second part of a homework for you. If you could, when you go home, Google the 7 corporal works of mercy. And that'll give us opportunity for the next 7 weeks to try to affect change in our life. Imagine if we, for the next 7 weeks, chose to do the corporal works of mercy. The first is to feed the hungry. And we might say, how can I do that? Well, you can sponsor Our young people, once a month, they prepare and they deliver food to the shelter in Joliet, Daybreak. Maybe we can help support that. What about the second is to give drink to those who are thirsty. Our Peace and Justice Committee, together with Mary Meyer, help bring awareness to those people that don't have what we sometimes take for granted. And when we're thirsty, we go to the kitchen sink or we go and we get some water. Those simple things that we routinely take for granted. To visit the sick. St. Jude has a wonderful ministry for folks who are no longer able to come to church. Many of you take communion to those people. Those who we call the pillars of our community, who once were here with us, because of illness, can no longer be here. And we know that those simple visits make the world of difference in their lives. How are we called to share that sense of joy with others? So as we gather this morning, we are able to receive the source and summit of who we're called to be. So as we come to receive the Eucharist this morning, let us bring those things, let us bring our lives, so that as we leave, we reflect the joy and the heart of God's compassion.